I think back to when I first started learning coding. I was the kid that sat in the back of math class in middle school, and I had my little TI-83 plus calculator, and I would just program it with BASIC. Because at some point I realized that I can actually program the answers for the math test into the calculator.
Hey, I'm Alex. I lead Claude Relations here at Anthropic. Today, we're going to be talking about Claude Code and the future of software engineering, and I'm joined by my colleague, Boris.
I'm Boris. I'm member of technical staff here at Anthropic and creator of Claude Code.
A lot has happened in the past 12 months, and things are moving very, very fast, especially in the coding domain. For folks that maybe aren't following the news every single day or even staying on top of the latest, and I have trouble myself sometimes, can you kind of catch us up here on what's happened and where are we standing currently?
Yeah, a year ago, coding was totally different than what it is today. A year ago, if you want to write code, you have an IDE, you have some sort of autocomplete in the IDE, and then there's some sort of chat app, and you might copy and paste code back and forth a little bit. And that was the state of the art. That was AI in coding. And I think maybe sometime around a year ago, we started to see agents appear as a thing that people earnestly use in coding. It's like a part of the workflow. It's not like a gimmick or a prototype. It's actually part of the inner loop when you're doing dev. And I think this is the thing that's changed the most in the last year, is now when you code, you use an agent. You don't directly manipulate text in the IDE anymore. It's not just about tab. It's about the model writing code for you. And I think what we've started to see is the shift from directly manipulating text to having the model do the text manipulation for you. And I think projecting it out, this is sort of the trajectory that we're on, is this continuing into the future.
I see. So we've gone from it all being within a web app where you're copy pasting the code out and you're making very targeted edits almost, to just being a lot more hands off and telling an agent what you want it to do and then trusting it to go make tons of edits and create whole apps sometimes even by itself.
Yeah, exactly. And this was something that I think the reason we couldn't do it a year ago, and people have tried to make AI do coding for the longest time and to just automate more and more of coding in various ways, and it hasn't really worked. I think probably for a couple of reasons. One is the models weren't really good enough, and the second one is that the scaffolding, the thing on top of the model, wasn't good enough. And when we initially launched Claude Code, the very, very first versions late last year, I think this was still using Sonnet 3.5. This wasn't even 3.6 or whatever we call this thing, the new Sonnet 3.5.
Yeah, upgraded Sonnet.
Yeah, it wasn't even this. And it sort of worked, I used it for maybe 10% of my code or something like that. But even then, I remember when we launched it, we gave it to the core team, and it was just me and a few other people on the team at the time. And I remember walking in one morning, and kind of on the way to my desk, there was a few engineers sitting there, and one of them was Robert, and there was a couple other engineers. And I just walked in and I saw Claude Code on their screen the first time. And I just gave this to them the day before and they're already using it.
Yeah.
And it was just the craziest thing. And the model wasn't very good. The harness wasn't very good. But even in this early version, it was already a little bit useful. And I think that over the last year, what's happened is the model has gotten way better at agentic coding. And that's happened with 3.7 and now 4.0 and Opus 4.1. And the harness has also gotten a lot better. Right. And, obviously the harness is Claude Code, because the way you interact with the model, you can't just directly use the model. You have to use a harness. It's sort of if you're riding a horse, you need some sort of saddle. And that saddle makes a giant difference when you're riding a horse. I'm not a horse rider.
I like that analogy, though. I mean, it is kind of like Claude is the horse, and as the engineer, you're trying to get it to go in a certain direction, and you're trying to guide it, and you need some sort of scaffolding around it to be able to steer it correctly. And the harness in this case, just so we're on the same page, is everything from the tools we're giving it to how we handle the context and everything for the model.
Exactly. It's all of Claude Code. The model is the thing behind the API, and then Claude Code is the system prompt, it's context management, it's tools, it's the ability for to plug in MCP servers, settings, permissions, all this kind of stuff. All of this interfaces with the model.
Yeah.
And the model sees all the context, all the output from this stuff, and it makes a giant difference in the way that it performs. And I think over the last year, we've learned how exactly we build for the model. And the model has kind of co-evolved with not just Claude Code, but all these different products that are using Anthropic models to build agentic coding tools.
Maybe let's speak more on that. When you say co-evolve, is that because it's like a deliberate thing in which we're doing with the training, or how is the model also getting better at these sorts of things as we make the product features itself better?
It's pretty organic, honestly. Like, at Anthropic, everyone uses Claude Code, and that includes the researchers. And so every day, the people building the models are using the model in order to do their job. And I think as part of that, you kind of see these natural limits that you hit with the model. So, as an example, maybe the model is really bad at doing certain kinds of edits. And sometimes when you use Claude Code, you see like, oh, failed to replace string, failed to replace string. Like this is a model capability, and we can improve this if we learn from it. Or another example, maybe something like higher level, is if you just let the model cook for like 30 minutes, with 3.5, it could kind of do it for a little bit, maybe for like a minute or something, it would stay on track. And then with newer models, it kind of gets longer and longer. This amount of time the model can operate autonomously. And I think this is really based on experience, because you use the model, you kind of see where as a human you have to course correct and steer it, and then we learn from that, and we can kind of incorporate that into the model and teach it better to do this itself.
When you're evaluating a new model, do you kind of have a vibe check set of tests that you run, or if it's like a new feature that we're rolling out to make something better in the harness, how do you personally evaluate if the performance is getting better?
I just do my work that day. Honestly.
Interesting.
Yeah. I'm like, my perfect day is I'm just coding all day. And, whatever the model is, whatever is the new thing we're testing, I'll just code using that and see what the vibe is. There isn't like a specific thing I do.
Right. You just see how does it actually work for me in my day-to-day.
Yeah, exactly. And it, in day-to-day work, you do all sorts of stuff. You're writing new code, you're maybe like fixing bugs, you're maybe reading Slack messages or GitHub issues to respond to feedback. And I think more and more the model is able to do more and more of this. So actually, in a way, if you had maybe one thing that you always use the model for, you would miss out on some of these newer capabilities, like pulling in context through MCP, like reading your Slack messages, or automatically debugging stuff, because you can pull in Sentry logs automatically.
Yeah, so the best eval in some sense is the one that most looks like real life, and in that case, just using it, it gives you the best result.
We tried really hard when building Claude Code to build product evals.
Yeah.
Just like to have some sort of benchmark, like when we change a system prompt or whatever, is the model getting better? And we have a little bit of this, but honestly, it's just like so hard to build evals. And by far the biggest signal is just the vibes. Like, does it feel smarter? Because there's such a broad range of tasks they use it for.
Yeah, that's actually a question I hear from developers all the time, is they would appreciate more guidance on how we go about prompt testing and iterating. I know for different products, we have like various sorts of evals that we've tried to create, but for Claude Code, it really is just kind of this tight feedback loop that almost gives us like more immediate signal than any hard-coded set of evals.
I wonder if people kind of want to hear a better answer from a AI. But yeah, man, it's all vibes.
Yeah.
I think at this point where, the models are doing so good on evals like SweBench, we're just trying to find these harder evals. Right. And now there's like Tbench, which is like a little bit less kind of saturated. But I think it's just really hard to find synthetic evals that capture all the complexity in software engineering.
Right. Do you think there's something we did uniquely to set up that feedback loop internally? Because I feel like Claude Code has like the best dog fooding cycle I've seen of like any type of product.
Initially, I built it the way that I do any other product, which is just listen to users and make it as easy as possible to listen to users. And I think one part of it is when we built Claude Code, there was just like a single feedback channel in Slack. And anytime anyone had feedback, I would just direct them to that. Just be like, yeah, post there. And I feel like people hesitated sometimes a little bit, because sometimes when you give feedback, you expect that no one listens, and it kind of goes into this black hole, like into a void. And I think one of the things that we did really right was from the beginning, whenever someone gave feedback, I would try to fix it as fast as I can. And sometimes I would kind of go into the office and then just spend like 3 hours or 2 hours or whatever, just go through as many bugs as I can and fix them as fast as I can. and then every time comment back and tell people it's fixed.
Right.
And this kind of encourages them to keep giving feedback.
Right.
And to this day, the Claude Code feedback channel internally is just this fire hose.
Yeah.
It's just nonstop.
Oh, totally. I remember on those early days, and still do, dropping in there, posting something, and immediately your emoji reacting, or you're asking for more clarification and more questions, and you do feel like, oh, okay, my feedback's being heard.
Yeah.
And then you're able to like actually be incentivized to go post more feedback in the future.
Yeah, because honestly, like I don't know what I'm doing. Like no one really knows what they're doing with AI. Like we're kind of discovering this thing as we build it.
Yeah.
And the best indicator is what the users want.
Right.
So you got to listen.
Right. Switching gears slightly, what is like the current state of Claude Code as a product? What are the latest features? What are you excited about? Some things that you're seeing folks do with it right now.
Claude Code from the start was built to be the simplest thing it can and to be as hackable as possible. And I think the hackability is something that we've been developing a lot. And that's something I'm really excited about. So originally, the way to hack Claude Code is adding to its CLAUDE.md. That was the original extension point. And CLAUDE.md, as you know, is like this file. You can put it in the root directory. You can put it in child directories. There's kind of different places you can put it. And it's just additional context to give Claude Code, and it kind of goes with your repo. You often check it into your code base. So it's kind of, a little bit more information about the code. But over time, we've added a lot more extension points. So now there's a very sophisticated setting system and permission system. There's hooks now, which Dixon built. Dixon's an engineer on our team, and he just kind of saw all these different user asks coming in for, I want to extend it this way, I want to hook into this. And so he built a super extensive hook system. MCP, obviously, this is a really great extension point. And now there's slash commands and subagents. And user-defined slash commands is something we've invested in a lot. And the idea is it's just a workflow. It's like a markdown file. You put it in your code, and it's something that you can reuse a lot. So for example, I have a slash command for making commits. And I have some instructions in there. Here's how you write a good git commit. I pre-allow the git commit bash command, so I don't have to accept it every time, and the model can just do it. So I think slash commands are really interesting, and agents are kind of a different view of slash commands. Like it's like a slash command, but it has a forked context window. And so you can kind of think of agents and slash commands as two sides of the same thing. And this is also very exciting. It's just another way to extend Claude Code. And so when I look at the future, I think a lot of it is just about like, how do we extend Claude Code more? How do we make it easier for other people to build on top? How do we make the SDK more useful for people? So it's useful for code if you want to build a coding agent, but also you can use it for other stuff, like anything that you need an agent for, you can just use the SDK for.
Yeah.
And I think these are the things that I'm the most excited about. And obviously all of this benefits from all the other work we're doing to make the model more autonomous, to make it work for longer periods of time, to make it better adhere to instructions, to make it remember things better.
Right.
And so everything along the way benefits.
So I'm using Claude Code or whatever form of it in 6 to 12 months. What does my work actually look like? Am I reviewing PRs all day, or what is it day-to-day breakdown to?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a mix of more hands-on coding. I don't think that's going away.
Yeah.
And maybe it'll look different though. So maybe hands-on coding today is directly manipulating text, but in the future, it might be using Claude to manipulate the text for you.
Okay.
And then I think there's going to be this other bucket of maybe less direct coding where Claude proactively does something and maybe Claude even reviewed it. And it's your job to decide if this is a change that you want or not. And I think maybe 12 or 24 months from now, we're going to start seeing Claude that's more about goals and more about these higher level things that it needs to do and less about the specific tasks that go into it. The same way that as an engineer, I think about what is it that I want to do over the next month, and I kind of make small changes to work towards that.
Right.
Maybe Claude will go through the same thing.
Right. So we're moving up and up the stack to some degree of these like abstraction levels of getting Claude to make individual changes to files, to getting Claude to make changes to a whole PR, to getting Claude to think about a goal of building an app or whatever else it is.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. If I'm an engineer and I'm hearing that, it seems like there's going to be a lot changing in a very short amount of time, especially with my role and what I should be doing. What's your advice for folks out there that are looking to prepare themselves and adapt to this world about what they should be learning or what skills they should be developing?
I think back to when I first started learning coding, I was the kid that sat in the back of math class in middle school, and I had my little TI-83 plus calculator. It was like a transparent gray one. You can kind of see the circuit. And I would just program it with BASIC, because at some point I realized that I can actually program the answers for the math test into the calculator, and you can get better grades that way. And there's just something about kind of this visceral feeling of being able to hack and having this idea of maybe there's this one program I can make, and just I go into my calculator and I code it, and then I can just restart and use it really quick. This kind of feedback cycle that was really amazing. And it made it possible for me to build stuff that I never could have before. And it was just so easy to get started. And I think about the difference between that world and the world before agentic coding, where stacks just got way, way too complicated. If I wanted to make a JavaScript, like website, I had to learn about React and maybe Next.js, and then 3 different build systems and a deploy system. And it was just so complicated. And I think one really cool thing about agents is that they're changing this. So with coding agents, it makes it really easy to get started. And if you have an idea, you can just build it. And it's a lot more about the idea now than it is about the details, because just like Claude Code, you can rewrite the code over and over. And Claude Code itself, we rewrite all the time. And I think this is just something that coding agents enable. The code itself is no longer precious. And there's still an art to writing it. And I'll still code by hand sometimes. And one of the engineers on the team, Lena, she was talking about how on the weekends, she still sometimes writes C++ by hand, just because it's fun. And as a coder, it can be a really joyous thing to do this. But I think more and more it's going to be about the thing you make and not about the process of making it as much. And I think my advice for people learning to code today is you still have to learn the craft. So you still have to learn to code, learn languages, learn compilers, runtimes, how to build web apps, how to build programs, system design. You still have to know all the stuff. But also just start to get more creative.
Right.
And if you have an idea for a startup or an idea for a product, you can just build it now in a way that you just couldn't before. And we don't really understand what this means, but there's just so much potential that's about to be unlocked because of it.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great advice too. Ideas suddenly become something you can action on in a span of a few minutes almost, whereas before it could be just in your backlog forever.
Yeah.
Before we wrap, I want to ask you, as a creator of Claude Code, what are your best practices for using Claude Code, and any tips or tricks?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I recommend, maybe two tricks.
Yeah.
So one thing I recommend is that if you're brand new to Claude Code and you haven't used it before, don't use it to write code. And instead, I know it sounds crazy.
Explain.
But you got to stop yourself. Like, don't use it to write code yet. The thing to start with is use it to ask questions about the code base. So you can ask, if I want to add a new logger, how do I do that? And then ask Claude Code to explore the code base and figure it out for you. Or why is this function designed the way that it is? Claude Code can go in and it can look through Git history and it can answer this stuff for you. So I think ask Claude Code questions about the code base and just don't code yet. And then once you feel comfortable with using Claude Code this way, and you get comfortable with this idea of an agent that's doing this research for you, then start to use it to code. I think the second thing is, when you are using Claude Code to write code, think about what kind of work do you want to do, and like how big is the task. So for something that's really easy, I kind of in my mind I have these 3 categories: easy, medium, and hard, very roughly. And so easy tasks are something that Claude can write in one shot, like one prompt, it'll get it pretty much right. And nowadays, I'll just go to GitHub and I'll tag @Claude on an issue and just have Claude write the PR for me. And this is how I do easy tasks, because that frees up my terminal. I don't have to kind of spend it on this. Medium tasks, I'll start in the terminal and I'll start in plan mode. So just shift tab into plan, and I'll align on a plan with Claude first. And then once I feel good about the plan, I'll go into auto accept and I'll have it implemented. And then for really hard tasks, I'm still the one driving, and Claude is more of a tool. And I'm kind of pairing with it, but really I'm the one in the driver's seat, not Claude for this. And so I'll use Claude maybe to do some code-based research, maybe prototype a few ideas. Maybe I'll just like vibe code a few options and to understand the boundaries of the system and what works well. But I'll still mostly implement it myself. And maybe Claude will write the unit tests. But it's still mostly me doing the coding. So I think that'll be the second advice, is just think about what's the task that you're doing and what's the right way to use Claude Code to do it.
Mm-hmm. Those are great tips. Really appreciate the time, Boris. This has been awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Alex.